All right, so today we're going to be talking about climate and what are the different types of climates around the world. So in our Buzz app, we'll be under third period social studies, and we'll scroll down to where it says quarter two assignments, and we're going to be under the week of November 9th and November 13th. And there should be just 3 things listed in that folder because that's the only assignments we're going to be doing this week in that, since we'll start our project tomorrow. But there's a define climate, teach it, a read it, and a show it. So with the show it today, there are at least 2 questions that you're going to have to go to the read it to help you answer those questions. So at least 2 questions I'm not going to go over in our lesson. So you're going to have to go to the read it to help you answer those. And most of that is going to be answered in the introduction little paragraph here. So make sure you take a look at the introduction paragraph, and that'll help you with those 2 questions, okay? And then the show it for today is just 7 questions. So like I said, most of it we'll cover in our lesson, but not all of it. So you'll have to check the read it to answer some of those questions. So number 1, it says, what is climate? So we'll talk about what climate is today. Number 2, you're filling in the blank. So it says the climate and blank blank. So it's a term. It's a vocabulary term that's split into 2 words. And then it says the blank blank of the land in an area affect the people's lives and who live in that area. So climate and something else affect the people's lives that live in that area. So you just type in your answer for that one. Number 3, it says, which of the following is not a geographical feature? So you have to look in the read it to figure out what a geographical feature is and which of those is not a geographical feature. Number 4, it says, what is one of the most important factors in determining the climate of a region? So which one of those are the most important factors? We'll cover that in our lesson. Number 5, it says one way the earth and the sun affect the climate is by the tilt of the earth. And how does this affect the climate? So how does the tilt of the earth affect the climate? We'll cover that. Number 6, it says on which date does the sun's rays directly hit the equator? So what day does the sun's rays directly hit the equator? And then number 7, it says what city and state has a dry desert climate? So some of these answers you're going to have to look in the show it or in the read it to help you answer those questions. Okay, so let's get to our little lesson for today. So we're going to be talking about climate. So climate, it is, so let's talk about what climate is first. So what is climate? So climate is the weather conditions in an area over an extended period of time. So go ahead and write down this definition for climate. So climate is the weather conditions in an area over an extended period of time. So when we're talking about climate, what the climate is, it's basically the weather that you experience in a certain area, but it's the average weather over an extended period of time. So usually when we measure climate, we take a look by like the year. So what's our weather like throughout the entire year? So our climate in our area where we live in Ohio, we have 4 seasons. So our climate varies. We have 4 seasons, 4 specific seasons. So we have summer, winter, fall, and spring. And each of those seasons has different temperatures and different types of rainfall and precipitation. So we see a wide range of weather in our climate. But some other climates might just see very cold temperatures. Some of them might see very warm temperatures. Some of them might see a lot of rainfall. Some of them might see no rainfall. So the climate is just the average, basically the weather conditions in an area over an extended period of time. So the weather conditions in an area over an extended period of time. So that is what climate is, climate. It's the weather conditions in an area over an extended period of time. And so there's many different climates around the world, which we're going to cover just about 8 of them today. So 8 of them in brief detail. All righty. So how do we get climates? How does the climates happen here on Earth? So the big thing is the reason why we have climates and we have these different changes in temperature is because of the Earth's position in relation to the sun. So where the Earth is compared to the sun, that gives us our different climates. So the Earth's position, where it is throughout the entire year, where the Earth is located in relation to the sun, that gives us our different climates. So the Earth's position in relation to the sun gets our different climates here. And so when we're talking about that Earth, the Earth is tilted, and you guys will go in more in detail on this in science class this year when you guys cover planets. But the Earth's tilt, it's tilted on its axis. So if the Earth was straight up, we would have the same season all year round. We would experience the same weather. But since it's tilted just a little bit, kind of diagonally on its axis, about 23.5 degrees, and as it rotates around or revolves around the sun and it rotates on its axis, that's how we get our different seasons. So this means that not all places get the same amount of sunlight. So because of the Earth's tilt, because it's tilted, all the different places around the world get different ranges of sunlight. Alrighty, so you might get more sunlight in one part of the year and less sunlight in another part of the year. So where the sunlight is most direct is where it's warmer. So where the sunlight hits most directly, that's where it's warmer. And usually the sunlight hits directly at the equator. And there's an official day that the sunlight hits directly at the equator, and that is March 21st. So March 21st, or the beginning of spring, that is when the sun's rays directly hit the equator. So that's the only day where the sun's rays are hitting directly in the middle of our Earth at the equator, and that's March 21st. Okay, so as we rotate around the sun or revolve around the sun, we experience different amounts of sunlight. So right now we are down, and if we were looking at the map on the screen there, we're down right in the middle of this area here. So right in the middle of the fall and winter, the beginning of fall and winter, in November, what is today, November 9th. So we're kind of right in the middle here. We're getting closer to that December 22nd, beginning of winter day. But the big thing to remember is March 21st is when the Earth experienced the direct sunlight hitting the equator. And the Earth's tilt and the revolution around the sun, that creates our seasons. So the different tilts, that creates our 4 seasons here in our state. And the seasons are opposite in the northern hemisphere as they are in the southern hemisphere. So we are in the northern hemisphere. So right now it is fall. It is fall. So if we were to go in the southern hemisphere, it would actually be spring. So they have their flowers blooming. They're getting some rainfall, and it's springtime in the summer in the southern hemisphere. So when we go into winter, we have our cold winters here in a couple months. In the southern hemisphere, they're actually going to be experiencing summertime. So they'll have their warm summertime in the southern hemisphere. So it's the exact opposite between the northern and southern hemispheres. All right, so all we need to say for this screen is just the Earth's position to the sun. It affects the climate. So the Earth's position to the sun, Earth's relation to the sun, affects the climate. That's all we need to say for this screen here. And then you also need to know that March 21st is the day where the sunlight hits directly at the equator. So March 21st is the day where the sunlight hits directly at the equator. All righty. So March 21st hits directly at the equator. And then the Earth's position to the sun affects our climate. All righty. So now let's get into our 8 climates, our 8 different climates. So we're going to go through all 8 climates, and we're just going to write down something very brief about each climate, because for the project, you guys are going to be doing some research for each of these 8 different climates around the world. So I'm just going to give you very basic details today, and you guys will be doing more in-depth research for your project. All righty. So our first climate is the marine climate. The marine climate, and all we need to say for the marine climate, if I can get my pencil up, there we go. All we need to say for the marine climate is that oceans play a big role. Oceans play a big role. So oceans play a big role in the marine climate. So the marine climate tends to be located between 30 and 60 degrees north and south of the equator. So we start off a little bit further away from the equator, and the climate is varied due to the vast area. So the climate is kind of affected by the ocean. So the marine climate is any climate that's above, around the ocean or right along the ocean. So right along the beach, right along the coast is where we get our marine climate. And the marine climate, it varies. So they tend to have a lot of warmer temperatures. They got a lot of wind. They get some rainfall. They get some storms. And this includes the Pacific coast of North America, Europe, and parts of South America, Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. So this is a big range of climate, but the ocean basically affects the climate in this area. So the ocean plays a big role in the marine climate. So that's all we need to say for the marine climate. So the ocean plays a big role with the marine climate. All right, so the ocean plays a big role. Okay, our next climate is the Mediterranean climate. And the Mediterranean climate, what we're going to say for this one is the climate is mild with only 2 seasons, and that is summer and winter. So the climate is mild with only 2 seasons, and that is summer and winter. So with the Mediterranean climate, now we're getting a little closer to the equator. So this is located between 30 and 40 degrees latitude. And it's usually on the western side of a continent. So if we were looking at North America, the Mediterranean climate is mostly on the western coast of the continent. So in the states of like California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Idaho, Wyoming, as we get over there. Okay, in the western part of the continent, western part of North America there. And so this climate usually has only 2 seasons. So they have summer and winter. So the temperature stays around the same throughout the entire year. So the summertime, they get up to maybe like 90 degrees, not extremely hot, but still pretty warm. And then in the wintertime, they get around like 50 to 60 degrees. So it stays within about 30 degrees, depending on the season. And they get some rainfall, which they average about 20 inches of rainfall annually. So they get some rainfall, not a lot, but they get a fair amount of rainfall. And so that allows some crops to live there. And not the greatest farming weather in the Mediterranean climate, not the greatest farming climate, but it allows for some crops to grow in the Mediterranean. So the Mediterranean, the climate is mild with only 2 seasons, summer and winter. So it's mild with only 2 seasons, summer and winter. All right, it's mild with only 2 seasons, summer and winter. Then we go to our next climate, which is going to be the highland climate, And all we're going to say for the highland climate is exactly what the name sounds like. We're just going to say that the land is high. Land is high. So the land is high for the highland climate. The land has to be high. And so the land is high, which causes the highland climate to be more mountain ranges and higher elevation. So as you get higher up into the highlands, into the mountains, the cooler temperatures you get. So as you get higher up into our atmosphere, the cooler temperatures you get. And that causes the precipitation up at the top of mountains to be snow because of the cooler temperatures. So even though it could be like 70 degrees and nice and sunny at the bottom of a mountain with all the green trees there, as you get up higher into the mountain, then you get some of that less atmosphere and more colder temperatures, and that's where you get the snow. Yes, Emmeline?
With some of mountains, if they get high enough, there's like no oxygen. Like you could sit there for a little bit, but that's it.
Yep, so as you get higher up in the mountains, you start to lose some oxygen. So it doesn't hold a lot of oxygen up higher in the mountains. So you have to take some tanks or do some breathing exercises. And in the highland climate, there are also no seasons. So it's the same season all year round. So it sends you the same season, same temperatures all year round. So that's the highland climate. The highland climate. And then the next one is one of our biggest climates throughout the world, our most common climate, and that is the desert climate. The desert climate. And so for this one, we're going to say that they get less than 10 inches of rain per year. So less than 10 inches of rain per year in the desert climate. Less than 10 inches of rain. So when you think of a desert, you don't think of rainfall. You think of this dry environment. And so the desert climate actually covers about 1/3 of the planet. So about 1/3 of our planet is covered in desert. So deserts play a big role in factoring in our weather and a big role in determining our geographical features around the world. So about 1/3 of our planet is covered in desert, and you'll cover deserts, more specific deserts, more in 6th grade, like the Sahara Desert, which is in Africa, and how that desert plays a big role in the climate around the world. And then in the desert range is found mainly around the 30 degrees latitude, north and south. So we're getting a little bit closer to the equator, but still only about 30 degrees away from the equator. And they get little to no rain. So they only get about 10 inches of rain per year in the desert. So if they get rainfall, usually it's a very small amount because it's very hard for clouds to form and create precipitation when there's no water nearby. So deserts are very dry, not a lot of water, if any water at all, a lot of sand, broken down rock. Okay, so deserts, less than 10 inches of rain per year. Deserts. Our next one is similar to a desert, and it's called the steppe climate. The steppe climates. So these are similar to a desert in that they have similar characteristics, but they're not quite a desert yet. So with steppe climates, they are known for being semi-arid. So that's what we're going to say for the steppe climates. They're known for being semi-arid. Semi-arid. So what that means is they don't receive a lot of rainfall or much rainfall at all. So again, similar to deserts, they're not getting a lot of rainfall with steppe climates. And these tend to be more our plain regions. So they're Great Plains. So they're very dry, grassy plains, generally closer to the desert climate. So they're close to a desert climate in location, but they're not quite a part of the desert climates because they have more grassy plains. And they have few trees and few tall grasses. So few trees that are grown there and few tall grasses that are shown in our steppe climates. But the big thing with steppe climates is they're known for being semi-arid, so they don't get a lot of rainfall. Not a lot of rainfall in our steppe climates. All right. Hang on, announcement.
Teachers, pardon the interruption. We are looking for Chromebook number 11, cart 11. Thank you.
All right, so our next climate is going to be the humid continental climate, And so this is the climate that we are actually located in here in Ohio. So we have the humid continental climate. And this one, we're just going to say it has 4 seasons. So it has 4 seasons with the humid continental climate. So with the humid continental, they have 4 seasons in it. So they have the spring, fall, summer, and winter. So the 4 different seasons. This is usually found between the 40 and 60 degrees latitude in inland continents. And it's mainly in the northern hemisphere. So these are mainly found in the northern hemisphere, the humid continental climate. And it has 4 seasons, like we said. And then it's also good for farming. So a lot of good farming weather, good farming climates, allows a lot of rainfall, not too much rainfall, a lot of sunlight, good temperatures to grow crops. So allows it's a good place for farming as well, the humid continental climate. The humid continental climate. So this is our region, our climate that we have here in Ohio and here in the Midwest region. We have the humid continental climate. So it has 4 seasons there. So it's another common climate characteristic. We got 2 more. Our next one is the tropics or subtropic climate. Next one is the tropics or subtropic climates. And what we're going to say for this one is that the precipitation ranges from 60 to 100 inches in a year. So the rainfall gets to about 60 to 100 inches throughout the entire year in the tropic region. So the tropic region, we're getting closer to the equator now with our warmer temperatures. And so we're located between 15 and 20 degrees from the equator. And the tropic region, so they have wet averages, they get a lot of rain. So wet averages, they stay around 80 degrees though all year round. So 80 degrees for the entire year. And so if you really like warm weather and sunlight and you like listening to rainfall, you can move to the tropic region. So the temperature changes only about 8 degrees throughout the entire year. So they stay within about 72 to 88 degrees throughout the entire year. And like we said, they get a lot of rainfall. So the precipitation ranges from 60 to 100 inches. So a lot of rainfall in the tropic region. It only has one season since the temperature stays about the same throughout the entire year. So it stays about one season. And the vegetation is very tropical. So very tropical vegetation. That vegetation, the crops need a lot of water. So if you like a plant, if you're a plant that enjoys a lot of water, then you go live in the tropics. It's good to grow in the tropics. And this climate can support a tropical rainforest. So a lot of our tropical rainforests are located in this region, in this climate area. So we go from the tropics to our last region, which is going to be the tundra or the subarctic climate. So the tundra, and all we're going to say for the tundra is that it's very cold climate. It's a very cold climate. So the tundra, the frozen tundra, extremely cold. They have long, extremely cold winters. So if you really like snow and cold temperatures, then you can go move to a tropic climate and be happy there. They have very short, warm winters, not hot summers or summer. They have short, warm summers that are not hot. So the temperatures get about to 60 to 70 degrees, not very hot, but it's pretty warm. And that's the biggest change that they see within the tundra region. So not an extreme amount, but they stay at those colder temperatures throughout the entire year. So it's a very cold, snowy winter, very cold, snowy winter. All righty. So those are our 8 climates that we're going to go over, and you guys are going to be doing more research on those as you do your project, as we start our project next week. But for right now, you're going to go back to your show it and complete your show it. Okay.